Welcome back to another breeding update. Right now is one of the busiest and most exciting times of the year here in the aviaries. Today we'll check on lots of breeding: finches, softbills, ballymenas, gouldian finches, take a tour through the outdoor aviary and visit the chicken aviary where some of the new species have arrived. We'll also see how days of heavy rain have affected some of the birds. So let's get started. Let's start with one of my absolute favorite species, the crested partridge. The first breeding attempt this spring was simply too early. The chicks hatched during a period when daytime temperatures were only around 5 degrees Celsius, and sadly they didn't survive. The pair laid another clutch, and this time 3 chicks hatched. Unfortunately, only one has made it so far. In general, the crested partridges aren't easy to breed, and even successful pairs rarely raise more than 3 chicks. Unlike many other partridge species, the parents catch huge numbers of insects and feed almost everything directly into the chicks' beaks. They are fascinating birds, and I'm really hoping this little one will continue to do well. And here we have one of my jumbo zebra finches, and I really enjoy having them in the outdoor aviary. They are reliable breeders, which is a nice contrast to some of the much more challenging species I keep. It's always fun to see new chicks, and good quality jumbo zebra finches are actually possible to sell, unlike the common standard zebra finch, which is very widely available. People often ask if my zebra finches disturb other breeding birds, especially because there are so many. In my aviary, with plenty of space and lots of nesting sites, I haven't experienced any problems. And I simply love hearing their familiar songs and calls filling the garden throughout the day. These are my red-faced leochiclas. Together with the turagos, they are the largest birds in this aviary. They are very calm, and most of the time they cause no problems at all. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any real breeding attempts from them this year. I've seen them take finch eggs once, but it's certainly not something they always do. They often ignore eggs that are clearly visible, but it is still a risk when mixing larger and smaller species, so I always keep a very close eye on it. I've also had some cardinals' nests disturbed this year, although I still haven't identified the culprit. I know I'd probably raise much more chicks by keeping every pair separately, but I simply love seeing all these species living together in one large aviary, and as you can see, I still get plenty of chicks. My red-crested cardinals lost several chicks earlier this spring, which all died shortly after fledging because of the cold weather. It was really a disappointing day to find them on the floor. Since then, they successfully raised one youngster, and it's still here in the aviary with the parents. And now the parents are nesting again on 2 eggs, so hopefully we'll have more chicks very soon. This species can easily become overweight when kept in small aviary or cages, but that has never really been an issue here in my 20-meter aviary. As you can see though, my female is looking a bit heavy at the moment, probably because she is spending so much time incubating. Hopefully she'll slim down again once the chicks hatch and the feeding begins. A few days ago we had some really terrible weather, with heavy rain and an intense thunderstorm during the night. I'm often surprised how well adult birds can protect their eggs and chicks from bad weather, and especially rain. The most vulnerable stage is actually during the first few days after the chicks leave the nest. Unfortunately, my turagos lost their eggs during that storm. I don't think the rain itself was the problem. My guess is that the constant thunder right above us frightened the birds off the nest for too long. It was even scary for our kids, so I'm sure the birds felt it too. Naturally, the weather isn't a problem for the birds I keep indoor, although thunderstorms can still scare birds off their nests. At the moment, several species are breeding inside, while others are simply growing up until they're old enough to move into the outdoor aviaries or to new homes. I also keep some of my blue and silver mutation gouldian finches indoors throughout the summer. These color mutations are generally more delicate than the wild-type birds. I've tried keeping them outside, but in my experience, the blue and especially the silver birds often become weaker. So for them, the indoor bird room provides the safest environment. One thing I often get asked about is my use of society finches as foster parents. I only use foster parents when it's truly necessary. For example, if a first-time pair of gouldian finches fails to raise their chicks, or if they simply hatch more chicks than they can successfully feed themselves. The goal is never to maximize the number of clutches from a valuable pair. Instead, it's about giving the chicks the best possible chance of surviving when the biological parents are struggling. The society finches I keep indoors are also occasionally used for chicks from my outdoor aviaries. Every now and then, a pair of finches abandons their nest or throws out a chick. Sometimes I even find a tiny chick lying on the aviary floor without knowing which species it belongs to or even which nest it came from. In situations like that, experienced foster parents can make the difference between life and death. That said, I never use foster parents simply to produce more young from the rare species, taking eggs or chicks away from successful parents. If a pair is raising their own chicks well, I always let them continue doing so. A fun fact is that the society finches don't actually exist in the wild. They are domesticated species that has been bred by humans for hundreds of years. Their calm temperament, excellent parenting skills and willingness to care for chicks from many different finch species have made them one of the most reliable foster parents in aviculture. Even though society finches can raise chicks on little more than seed and water, it's very important to provide a nutritious diet. This is especially true when they are raising species that naturally require plenty of insects, egg food, or sprouted seeds for healthy growth. Before we continue with the indoor species and head back to the large outdoor aviary, let's take a look at a few birds that are relatively new to my collection. These Indian runner ducks have grown incredibly fast. I got them when they were just small ducklings and now they are almost fully grown. It looked like I ended up with 2 drakes and 4 ducks, which should make a nice breeding group in the future. Also, I got these new turkeys. The Indian runner ducks are quite different from most of the duck breeds. Instead of waddling with horizontal posture, they stand almost upright and are surprisingly active. They are excellent foragers and are well known for helping control slugs and snails, so I sometimes let them roam freely in the garden. I also started collecting rainwater from the aviary roof to refill their water containers. Ducks go through an amazing amount of water every single day, not just for drinking, but also for washing their bills and splashing around. So using rainwater makes a lot of sense. I also have 3 bronze turkeys. For now, I'll be keeping all of them, although we may eventually use one for meat. Bronze turkeys are a heritage breed that can reach around 10 to 16 kilograms, with the males being much larger than females. Once I had a male reaching 20 kilos. When they're young, turkey poults can be surprisingly fragile and require warmth and careful management. But once they get past those first weeks, they become very hardy, impressive birds with plenty of personality. Like the ducks, they also enjoy spending time out in the garden whenever possible. And speaking about personality, my Major Mitchell cockatoos, also known as pink cockatoos, have plenty of personality too. In fact, these two couldn't be more different. They now reach the age where they can breed for the first time. They didn't nest this year though, but about a month ago I saw them mating for the very first time. That's a really encouraging sign and suggests they are becoming a bonded breeding pair. Now it's simply a matter of being patient for me. With birds like these, you can't rush anything, and I'd much rather wait another season than put any unnecessary pressure on them. Some birds that are already ready to breed are my Finches lovebirds. They have been doing incredibly well, and they recently raised a clutch of 4 healthy chicks, and already they're back on eggs again. My Ballymenas just don't seem to want to stop breeding. Their first clutch produced 3 chicks, but sadly none of them survived. The oldest was more than 2 weeks old before it died, while I was traveling and my uncle was looking after the birds. Looking back, I believe the parents simply didn't receive enough insects. Ballymenas eat huge amounts themselves, but when they're raising chicks, especially larger nestlings, the demand for live and frozen insects is incredible. They also love earthworms and large moths whenever I can find them. Their second attempt was even more frustrating. Halfway through incubation, they threw all 4 fertile eggs out of the nest. But now they're trying once again and are halfway through incubating 3 new eggs. This time, I'm much better prepared, with plenty of live and frozen insects ready if the chick hatches. Hopefully, this will finally be the clutch that succeeds. One thing I've learned is that breeding Ballymenas isn't just about getting fertile eggs. The real challenge comes after the chicks hatch, when the parents suddenly need an enormous amount of high-protein food every single day. My blue-eared glossy starlings have taken much longer to get started this breeding season, but they are finally incubating their first egg. It's only a single egg, but that actually doesn't surprise me. I've bred this species before, and this particular pair seems to prefer laying just one egg per clutch. The good news is that they're excellent parents, giving all their attention to that one chick. Sometimes quality is better than quantity, so I'm really hoping to see another healthy youngster from this pair very soon. Back in the outdoor aviary, here's an update on my loose and bleeding heart doves. It's actually been a few years since I last bred this species, despite them laying plenty of eggs every season. In fact, they were laying almost too many eggs without ever producing chicks. This spring, I finally decided to DNA test them, and the reason became obvious. My pair turned out to be two females. Apparently, I accidentally sold my male a few years back. Luckily, I was able to exchange one of the females for a male, so I finally have a true pair again. Hopefully, we'll see chicks before long. Just like the ballymeenas, the Luzon breeding heart is a very rare species in the wild. Of course, all of my birds are captive bred and have been for generations here in Europe, but it's still incredibly rewarding to help maintain these rare species through successful breeding. As mentioned before, my white-cheeked turacos had a disappointing setback this season. They abandoned their eggs after a severe thunderstorm, but that's sometimes part of breeding birds outdoor. They still look very bonded and are spending plenty of time together, so I'm hopeful they'll start another nest and give it another try soon. I currently keep 4 black siskins forming 2 pairs, but so far only one pair has attempted to breed this season. Unfortunately, every clutch has been infertile up until now. The female is incubating again, and this time on 4 eggs. So I'm really hoping we'll finally have some fertile eggs and chicks. Black siskins are sometimes deliberately crossbred with canaries, European goldfinches, or even red siskins. Personally, I prefer to keep all my species pure. In more than 10 years of mixed species aviaries, I've only had 2 accidental hybrids. I actually find that quite interesting because these species all live together in my large aviary, yet they almost always choose a mate from their own species. If you keep a mixed pair alone in a cage, they'll often breed together, but when they have a choice, nature usually takes over. The same goes for my finches, where hybrids are also extremely rare, and that's exactly how I like to keep it. Here we have a canary with her 3 healthy, fast-growing chicks. She's been a fantastic mother and protected them perfectly through the recent days of heavy rain. Walking around the aviary like this, quietly checking nests for eggs and chicks, following each pair's breeding progress, and even watching which birds fly in and out of which nests is honestly one of my favorite things to do. There's always something happening, and every walk reveals something new. I'm often asked which nests and nesting materials the birds prefer. As you can see, there's a huge variety. Some birds tend to choose similar nest types, but even the birds of the same species can have completely different preferences. That's why in a mixed aviary like this, I think it's important to offer as many options as possible. The same goes for nesting material. And hence, I provide different fibers for the outer parts of the nests, along with soft materials like feathers, dog hair, and rabbit fur for the lining. It's always fun to watch the birds running to collect exactly the material they want. One thing that almost always disappears first is white feathers. They're definitely a favorite for many birds. Besides offering ready-made nests, I also make sure there are plenty of natural nesting opportunities. Dense shrubs, climbing plants, and sheltered branches allow the birds to build entirely on their own if they prefer. Giving them that freedom lets each species and each individual pair choose what best suits them. And I think that's one of the reasons so many different birds breed successfully in here. One thing that often separates the species is the height at which they prefer to nest. Some birds almost always choose the high spots available. My red siskins, white-cheeked turacos, and red-crested cardinals typically build their nest 2 to 3.5 meters above the ground. At the other extreme are species like common waxbills and of course my kinquates and crested partridges, which nest directly on the ground. It's fascinating to see how each species has developed its own preferences, and by providing nesting opportunities at every height, there's room for them all to breed naturally. One of the finches that started the first this year with breeding is the double-barred finch. So far, they have already had a fantastic season. They keep 3 to 4 breeding pairs in the aviary, and they are incredible, reliable parents. They build these beautiful dome-shaped nests with a side entrance, usually hidden deep inside bushes or ivy, where they feel safe. They are peaceful little birds, so they fit really well into the mixed species aviary. Even though they are tiny, they are constantly busy collecting grass, feathers, and other soft nesting materials when I provide it. Besides the breeding pairs, at the moment I have several fledglings flying around in the aviary, while other pairs are already sitting on new eggs. So there are different generations all over the aviary at the same time. Another species that also started breeding very early this year is the star finch. Again, I keep 3 to 4 breeding pairs, and they have done really well. They are one of my favorite finches because of their beautiful plumage with all the tiny white spots that give them their name. They are slightly larger and a bit more colorful than the double-barred finches, especially the males with their bright red faces that light up the aviary when they fly around. They also prefer well-hidden nests surrounded by dense vegetation, and once they settle, they are excellent parents. It's always a great sign when both the double-barred finches and star finches begin breeding early, because it usually means the rest of the breeding season will be a busy and exciting one. These painted finches spend the entire winter outdoors, and as you can see, they look absolutely fantastic. They just haven't started breeding yet. In contrast, my chestnut-breasted munias going much earlier and have already raised 5 healthy chicks this season. In this box we have the cutthroat finches that are now on their second clutch of the season. Sadly, their first chick hatched with severely deformed legs, and I had to make the difficult decision to humanely euthanize it. Thankfully, breeding birds can sometimes have setbacks, and what really matters is how they do over time. This second nest is looking much more promising, with 2 healthy chicks growing well, so hopefully they both fledge successfully in just a couple of weeks. Here's a nest built inside a bamboo nest. At the moment, I actually don't know which species has claimed it. That's one of the fun things about keeping a large mixed species aviary. Sometimes several birds use exactly the same type of nests, so you simply have to wait for the parents to return before you know who the chicks belongs to. These 2 fledglings are diamond doves. They're actually one of the easy species to identify, even when the parents aren't nearby. Their nests are very simple and flimsy. They almost always lay 2 white eggs, and the chicks have a very distinctive appearance, so after keeping them for a while, you quickly learn to recognize them. Diamond doves are one of the smallest dove species in the world, and in my opinion, they are perfect for mixed species aviaries. They are peaceful, rarely bother smaller finches, and spend much of their time quietly walking around the ground searching for seeds and other food. My birds stay outdoors all year round and cope very well with the Danish climate once they are properly acclimatized. They are also very easy to breed. Most pairs are excellent parents and will often raise several broods during the breeding season. Because of that, my little flock has been growing steadily, and I now have more than 10 and perhaps more than 15 birds. So once the breeding season is over in autumn, I'll definitely have to find new homes for some of them. One thing I also like about diamond doves is their gentle personality. They are calm birds, they don't require much space compared to larger doves, and the males have a soft, pleasant cooing that's never loud or disturbing. Overall, they're simply a fantastic species for anyone wanting to add a small, beautiful dove to a peaceful aviary. And that's it for this breeding update. I hope you enjoyed coming along and seeing what's been happening in the aviaries and cages. If you'd like to support the channel and help me continue creating these videos, please consider becoming a paying member. It really does make a big difference. And as always, if you have any questions about the birds, breeding, or the aviary, leave them in the comments below. I generally enjoy reading your comments, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next breeding update. Bye bye.